All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 10th, 2021 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We have a relatively quick agenda tonight. Some reviews as we're getting ready to start the budgeting process. The finance team in town hall and the department heads are working on the budget, so we don't have a lot for the finance committee to do just yet with it, but we will go over some notes from the town manager on where we're at with free cash. We'll go over where we're at with the timeline for the FY23 budget, and then a few miscellaneous notes and things that we have to go over. So jumping, and then we'll go through our usual recurring items of liaison reports and correspondence and a review of minutes, which I'm realizing I don't have minutes printed off to go over. We'll go over minutes next meeting. And then we'll determine our next meeting and then adjourn for the night. So that's our plan for tonight. So jumping right into it, the first item on our agenda is going over where we are at with free cash certification for the fiscal year 21 budget's free cash. The note that we have from our town manager, Scott Lambiase, who cannot be here tonight because of a family commitment, is that we are currently closing out last year's Schedule A and balance sheet. Once that's complete, we'll be able to accurately identify our free cash. We expect this to be completed within 30 days. Anyone with questions there?
And I always forget, so like, do we have that money? And then, based on the calculation, we give some back if need be and we keep the rest? Or is it that the state has it, does a calculation, and then they give it to us?
Barbara, do you know?
So we, it's the money that comes back from departments and what we didn't spend, and then we account for it in our accounting department, and then we send all of our paperwork to the state, and they say whether they believe that's an accurate amount, and as long as everything jives, then that's money that we get back.
Is there ever like a chance they say, yeah, your number is okay, but it's over by 100,000, send us a check?
Well, so lots of times, Sue or whoever's,
It's Sonia now.
Sonia, so usually they will be able to tell us, they try to correct those things before, you know, if they know what will get looked at and be seen as, well, you can't really count that, or,
I got you.
So
Yeah,
not any time that I can remember that.
They work with the state in leading up to certifying the free cash and then leading up to filing it. So there's definitely back and forth between the town and the state.
It's just one of those things every year, I'm like, I understand there's leftover money and it's called free cash, but it's not really free.
And it's a complicated process because it has to factor in. So you know how in sort of the end of the summer we end up with, oh hey, we got this, which was an unpaid bill that came in. You have to account for, you have to give enough time to account for unpaid bills and things like that. You have to account for things that were supposed to be spent that weren't spent that probably still have to be spent, and there's a lot of bookkeeping that goes into making the number right. The state has their own rules and regulations that if you can discern them, you're better at that than I am. But
I'm trying to think of a time since I've been on here that I don't think it's happened that the free cash wasn't certified.
we usually have a pretty
sometimes
good
I think
idea.
they do, they'll go back and forth about something that, you know, between the accounting office and the state. But I can't remember a time that, and usually the accountant has a fairly ballpark idea of what will be, what we'll have for free cash.
Okay.
And we usually have a pretty good idea around when the fiscal year closes, but we don't know exact details until later into the fall,
Okay.
most years. So.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Comments? All right, looking now at the fiscal year 23 budget, our notes from Scott is that the department heads are on track to present a mid-December first draft of the fiscal year 23 budget. The first round of meetings with the department heads begins next week. They're meeting all day on the 17th and the 24th.
So I do have a question there.
Yep.
Maybe you were reading it as on track for a December 1st draft.
Mid-December.
No, I
Sorry.
know, but we were saying we wouldn't have a draft until December 1st. Like, there'd be no reason to meet before December 1st,
Yeah.
because we wouldn't have.
Sorry, I was
So
Okay.
mid-December.
mid-December.
I think she's in for December 25th.
Greg
Sounds
for those watching at home, Greg really wants to meet on Christmas.
will be
And is
meeting by
inviting
himself.
everyone in Abington to his house
Yeah.
on Christmas Day for a large town-wide finance committee meeting.
Fully catered. Sure.
So I just. Okay.
So I think your concern is, depending on when that first draft is available, it is relevant to when we meet next.
Right,
as a
well, because,
finance
and
committee.
because I'm
So,
thinking,
we'll-
all right, when we get to that,
We'll
we
get
can
to-
discuss it.
we can hash that out at the end of the
Okay.
meeting. But we will have a first draft of that by mid-December. Or we're on track to have a first draft by mid-December. For those who have not paid attention to all of our meetings, we are looking to have town meeting earlier in the year next spring. We're aiming right now for April 4th town meeting, which is between 6 and 8 weeks earlier than it's been the last few years. So we're looking to speed up the schedule and the process. We do have a tentative schedule for when the department heads will come to meet with the finance committee. The meetings will start on January 5th with IT, veterans, library, and fire. January 12th, assessor, town clerk, planning, and police. The January 19th, treasurer, DPW, and council on aging. 26th, water, building, and the Board of Health. February 2nd, accounting, golf, and South Shore VOTEC. February 9th, Abington CAM, the town manager's various budgets, and the town manager and the other budgets presented by the town manager. It's always one of the fun sections. February 16th is the school department. February 23rd is school vacation week, so we will not likely have a meeting, and then wrapping up on March 2nd and making recommendations. March 2nd, possibly March 9th, we should have time. We have to have our recommendations fully made. Is it 10 days or 2 weeks in advance of
10 days.
town meeting? I believe it's 10 days, so
We have to
that would be
posted
that would be
10
by
days.
March. I was scrolling on our phone.
Yeah, so what are we looking at?
That'd be by March 25th. So the latest we could possibly make them, if we're sticking to Wednesdays, would be March 23rd. We should definitely have them done by then,
Right, that
based on
gives
this
us one,
schedule.
two, Right.
So,
I guess
question,
this-
questions on the tentative schedule?
So Sonia mailed this out to the department heads?
No,
Or email them?
Sonia worked with the department heads to come
Oh,
up with
okay.
this schedule.
So, obviously, they're aware of it, but we should probably follow up as liaisons.
Yep, follow up with
Okay.
the departments that you liaise with, and as the meeting for your department heads comes closer, check in with them, see if there's anything that they need, if there's anything we need them to bring, make sure to check with them on that. One of the things that we do ask is that they be prepared to talk about potential either capital items for their department or warrant articles. Usually like water, sewer tend to have warrant articles.
Also, after we have a draft, lots of times questions will come up
Yes.
for a specific department.
Yep.
So if that's your department, it's usually good to touch base with them before they come in for our meeting, so they know that was a subject that we had a question about, so that they'll be able to bring whatever information we need.
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions on the schedule for moving ahead with the FY23 budget?
No.
All right, some current items that we have updates on, the ARPA, which is the new version of COVID stimulus from the federal government. We're still working on revenue replacement calculations, finding that requirements are not as flexible as we were led to believe. That doesn't sound good. It's very possible no revenue replacement will be available, but potential changes may impact this. We should have a better sense by our next meeting.
How did that change? Oh,
It's-
get it.
Well, the other part was, like, the revenue replacement was part of it, but then the other part of the money was available for investment, right?
So there were definitely things like, definitely things that would qualify, like vaccine distribution and things like that, that the town worked on and did that qualify for reimbursement.
Okay.
From this, we were, from the understanding that Scott had as of the last meeting when we talked to him, the federal government's regulations for what was considered revenue replacement was kind of a wide net. It sounds like that's not as wide. And they were looking at things like, well, if it weren't for COVID, we would have brought in this much revenue as a town, so we would have hired a town planner, or we would have
Yeah.
paid extra money towards this, or something like that, and they might be just battening down what we're allowed to actually cover
Okay.
with that kind of stuff.
I wonder if that's going to result in less overall, because we were gonna get, what, 800 and 800? I wonder if that's gonna affect
Total
I
overall.
think,
2.4
I think
million.
the amounts that we got, that we were getting were fairly set. I think it's just a question of what we are allowed to spend that money on.
Okay.
I think it's essentially the strings attached to the money, not the money
Yeah.
itself. But that is a good question for Scott and for Sonia.
And how much time do we have to spend this money?
So 3 years,
Yeah,
because I asked that question last time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what was he meaning by very possible no revenue replacement will be available?
Well, because again, I thought it was two pieces. There was a potential for a revenue replacement, and also separately, you could use it to invest in things, the capital things that qualified. So if
So-
you
so-
missed
and-
out on revenue.
yeah, so an example was, because the budget was lower, we did not purchase police cruisers.
Right.
So purchasing police cruisers with the ARPA money might not be allowed because it might be considered in.
So we'd
not
still
the-
receive the money, just we can't spend it on what we were hoping to spend it on.
That's my belief right now, but we definitely.
Not that
we
there would
definitely need
not be-
clarification on that.
Revenue replacement available.
Right. So I think that's.
The revenue replacement would still be available, just what we can
Well,
spend it
no, I
on
think
would be.
the revenue would still be available. The revenue replacement was like how you spend
Okay.
it.
So I thought I took it as like, if our budget was 60 million, and that was based on a certain amount of receipts, and it turned out we didn't get those receipts, that's where the revenue replacement could come from.
Right.
And that
We
And that
could,
additionally, the rest of the money could be used on qualified purchases.
yeah,
At least that's how I understood it, so.
yep.
Thank you.
It'd be interesting to see how the infrastructure bill
Yeah.
works out, because there's a lot of money there too.
And are they saying now that the qualified purchases is being restricted
It sounds like
based on what
it.
they originally thought?
Yeah, it sounds like they're being more restrictive than we originally thought with it, so. I know that as of the last discussion, they were definitely casting a wide net with what fell under revenue replacement. Like I was saying, like police cruisers or something like that, which really aren't COVID related in any way, but.
Maybe we can reach out to Scott and get a
So-
It's
clarification.
also really just a shuffle of money, right? So you could say that you were gonna spend money on, you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah,
could just say this goes over here. I mean,
It depends on what we're allowed to spend.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's
So-
probably gonna be a lot of accounting.
It certainly could be.
Yeah.
But can you do that with the way the budget is set?
Yeah, I think you just, if we didn't, so like, what he's talking about with the cruiser, we didn't do one cruiser, right? We were doing 3 and we did 2 or something like that, we cut out, so, could you take 50,000 from over here and put it towards that and say it wasn't spent there, it was spent over here? Sure.
So
I just think a lot of things are gonna be line
I think
items.
Paul's point is that because of the way municipal budgeting is, you can only do so much with moving things around.
Yeah,
Like if you're
sure.
buying a police cruiser, you can't buy that out of the liability insurance
Right,
sure.
line item, for example, so. It's
Although,
definitely,
is there an approval process you can go through? Because I know like with the school budget, if you had something in instruction, and you'd have to, I believe you have to go like to the school committee to get the approval to move that money from that lack of term fund to something else to use it. And I don't know if the town has that same,
yeah.
'cause you're right.
I
Why
think,
not just
I think
move it
there's,
around?
there's wiggle room kind of within each department in, like, the department's expenses, there's wiggle room within
And I
that.
I think too, when you're crafting the budget, when the town manager is crafting the budget, and he has more information about what he can't
Right.
spend it on.
Yep.
To Greg's point, like, okay, well, I know I can't spend that money on this, so I'm gonna put X amount of dollars into that, because I know I can't use this, this revenue reimbursement for that.
Yep.
So I'll put this money to here, and I'll use the revenue reimbursement from the state for something over here that they will cover.
Right.
Yep. Good. All right, some miscellaneous notes from Scott for this meeting. We received a $51,000 rebate check from National Grid for the replacement of the LED streetlights. Replacement was done at zero cost to the town, which will lead to a significant annual savings on the energy bill for streetlights, in addition to a one-time rebate. I believe we talked about that at the time that they were starting that. So that's good that we
Is that
received it.
done, do you think that means, or?
It sounds like it's done, yes.
And so that was obviously done by our departments and then rebated, okay?
Yep.
Do we know what significant savings means?
Millions? It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing as millions.
I think it's whatever the difference in energy costs for LED bulbs as opposed to sort of the,
Yeah, in theory, it
You'd
should
You'd be
it should be
amazed
six-
if you
the
look
four
back,
significant.
if you look back years ago, the streetlight budget, you'd be amazed that, we got to a point where people were paying, I think some people still do, pay for the streetlight to be lit on their street, because we shut certain ones that weren't necessary.
Right, yeah.
But
Yeah, I think we
you'd
had-
be amazed at how much it does actually cost to run those streetlights.
but to the point, I don't think they have the exact figures. I know from replacing bulbs in my own house, it's hard to come up with what the exact figures are for a
Yeah.
more energy efficient bulb.
I think it would be an easy comparison the first year after,
Yeah.
at least that.
National Grid could
Yeah.
probably tells you what they
Sure.
anticipate your savings to be.
I will say they do make a
DPW
difference in
would
the
know.
intersection. Like I have one up on Summer Street and
Yeah.
what a difference it makes.
Lot brighter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I lived on one of those corner houses, I might not be happy because it is bright.
Sure.
Yep. Next item, we are currently shopping our health insurance, liability insurance, and workers' comp. So last time in, we talked a little bit about this with health insurance. They were comparing companies and rates and stuff. So looks like 3 different lines that were like shopping, looking for the best rate there. We received, and this is actually one that I saw on Abington News, we received a $2.3 million MassWorks grant to upgrade the Myers Ave water system. Upgrades will add to the daily output of the well. I think they're adding an entire other, is either well or treatment
And I
plant
don't,
at Myers Ave.
can't remember if anyone remembers when Joe was here, and that was a discussion, if, will that help to fix the issue with the PFAS?
I think this is separate from the issue. I think this is more of a capacity
Okay.
issue. We were reaching capacities with the new constructions in the
Right.
town, we were reaching capacities of the water system. And this will help to expand that.
Yeah, I
So
think
it's
when
not
Joe,
gonna do anything for the,
I think, if I recall, when Joe was here, he said that, I thought there was a thing where, the pump was running at night, or the pump was running a lot extra, and they were trying to determine what's wrong. Is the pump not efficient? Is there a problem with it? And it turned out that there was just a lot of increased demand, so there was just significant increased demand. And that's why the pump was running so much more, so that's probably gonna take care of that
everybody
piece of
home
it.
too,
Yeah,
during the
that's the
time
range,
period
exactly.
of being home.
Yep.
So this isn't for that PFAS house? Okay.
Nope, this is adding capacity, essentially. Next note, the MSBA final audit of the middle school, high school construction project is finally complete. Received our final payment of $2.1 million last week. So our dealings with MSBA for the school building, it's hard to call it the new school building at this point, as it's a good 5 years old now, is complete. We would like to thank the MSBA for their partnership with us on that. Very much appreciated.
And that project came in under budget on time, too, right?
Yes, under budget and in fact early.
Early, yeah, 6
Nice.
months early.
Yeah. And putting together a RFP to shop for audit services. I know Chris has asked, he's not here tonight, but Chris has asked several times about the auditing services for the town. I would like 3 members of the finance committee to work with staff on evaluation criteria and selection. I am going to volunteer Chris as one of the 3. Do we have 2 other people that would like to work on
I'll
that?
volunteer.
Paul?
Sounds good to me too, if no one else wants it.
I spent 12 years in public accounting. I'll enjoy the
All
process.
right. Chris, Paul, and Joe for that. Thank you,
Do
gentlemen.
we know when so when Scott was here last time, we haven't put this out for bid in the past, have we?
I forget what he said.
I thought he said it.
I thought that there was a company that we had worked with most frequently, like most recently.
Yeah, I think you were asking if there was a
But I
requirement that you
don't-
had to rebid.
I think you're right. I don't think that it had been out for
Yeah,
bid in the
it's Powers and
past.
Sullivan that we use.
Yeah, I think he was saying that he couldn't recall if there was a requirement where you had to get new bids.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was a procurement policy where in the town
Yeah.
you had to do something.
Yeah, I mean, we asked that last time, and I think he said he didn't think there was.
I know that Mass Municipal Law has strict rules about purchasing and putting things out for bid, and
Right.
contracts going out for bid over a specific amount.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually the amount.
It's the amount, like there's an amount threshold that if you're going above that amount, you have to put something out for bid.
And the thing is, sometimes you do it just to get your costs down.
Yeah.
It may not, you want to just change firms. They may do a
Right.
great job. You just want to get your costs down.
Yep. And then the last note on here is that Scott has provided us with copies of the Finance Committee Handbook, which is very thick for those watching at home. And that this is a publication provided by the Mass Municipal Association through the ATFC. It's a very useful guidebook. Please keep in mind that each town and city does have unique characteristics and procedures that may differ from what's in the handbook. He found it to be a very useful resource when he first started on the Whitman Finance Committee. So definitely a good, nice, light reading for all of us. So.
See if there's an audiobook version. Listen on the car ride.
And
There'll be a test at the next meeting.
And while we're on the things that were provided for us, we have also been provided, as we requested at our last meeting, with an updated version of the ledger history that has more accurate details on amounts allocated, debits, credits, and ending for fiscal year '22. And that takes us through our primary agenda items for the night. Do we have any liaison reports?
Nope.
I actually do.
All right. What do we got, Paul?
Just pull it up here. So on October 26th, I met with Peter Schaefer and Felicia, Dr. Michella.
Nice.
And, one of the things they had stressed was the challenge of the learning loss by students as a result of the pandemic, and trying to work with staff, other professionals to keep kids engaged and involved. Just the total enrollment in the school, the district is 2,150 students. And I found this, so this year's graduating class is 155 students. In 2017, when my middle son graduated, it was 100. I mean, it's, the numbers, the average class size in grades K through 8 is in the mid-20s. And one of the things too is, we currently have 200 English learner students in the population. There were 30 new English learner students added in this school year alone. Where 10 years ago, there were about 28 students in the entire district. Which puts, additional burdens on the budget to help mainstream these students with additional support where it's needed. I looked at DESE, and they have this, the goal is to get these students proficient in English within 6 years, and Peter and Felicia were talking about, like, the goal in Abington, and they've been very successful, it's like it's 4 years. Talked about the extra space at the new middle high school. He says there is none, they're using everything. And then,
In the new high school?
yeah, they said that there's no extra space that isn't being used for,
Less kids are going to private schools
Right.
since we built a new school. We've had
Which-
more building, which is some more
Yeah,
building around town, which has
The town has
created.
grown.
well, yeah, because even you look at the number of kids in the graduating class, it's,
Yep.
5 years ago, it was 100, now it's
Yeah,
155.
well, we've seen our numbers even to the VOTAC
Yep.
decrease, our, what do you call it, our
Assessment.
assessment. Our assessment with the VOTAC has gone down each year
Right.
because more kids are,
Well, I think
Not
last year it was
seeking
up a
different
little bit for the
schools
first
since we
time
built.
since the new school was built.
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to that point, there's no need for additional space at this time. However, if the trends continue, there may be, a need to come back to the town to talk about space. But it's not on the table right now, but it's just, they're figuring that, everything goes cyclical.
Yep.
And so where we are right now is, if that's the trends continues, they would have to come back to the town. But it's like, I remember when Whitman Hanson went in, all of a sudden they saw the numbers go up, because wow, like that was the new shiny thing around. The Woodsdale School, the roof in the next few years will have to be replaced. They talked about laptops and software. It sounds like they're being very thoughtful as far as how they're rolling out, trying to get the most out of it, and Rich is doing a great job on that. Eliminating duplicate software applications that, now that they're, using things in the cloud, it's like software that they had before, then they're eliminating the duplications in that. So I didn't realize this, but students in every one-to-one student to computer ratio, 7 to 12, everyone, and then during the pandemic, they increased it through 5 through 6. So 5 through 12, all students one-to-one, which is a good thing. And one thing I was near and dear to my heart was the security awareness. They actually do offer it in the district. And they, in the last year, have done a penetration test and vulnerability scan on their network. So kudos to them for doing that. And then they were talking about 2 sources of the CARES funding, which they have about approximately $1.2 million, and then ESSER, the Elementary of Secondary Emergency Education Relief Fund, which is funding and put in place to help address the impact of COVID-19. So, but the one thing that they did stress on that, and I have to give them credit for this, is that, like the money from ESSER, they're not using that for operational matters. And they stress how, because they don't want to hit that cliff.
Right. You use
In
it
a
this
year or
year,
two
you
where
lose
it's
it
like-
next year, and you can't replace it, and yeah.
Right, so they're being thoughtful as far as that goes. And then there was one thing in, Mr. Chairman, as far as the management letter that we get, there was a comment, there's been a recurring comment there about student activity funds. It's been there for many years, and Felicia was telling me that they have over the last 2 to 3 years done an internal audit on it. They did hire a firm to come in and do an audit on it at, I don't know if it's at the high school or it's some student activity fund. But the CPA firm, Powers and Sullivan's, been recommending for years that somebody do something to come and check it out, make sure it's on the up and up. And so they are going to do that the next couple months.
You mean the activity fees?
It's the student activity, let's see. If you give me a minute, we
Yeah.
we continue to recommend to the town, obtain an audit of the student activity accounts from an independent audit firm at least once every 3 years. Student activity accounts are an area that are subject to less stringent oversight than operating budget expenditures. As a result, this is an area that is more susceptible to errors and irregularities.
That makes sense.
As a result, we also recommend that the school department implement procedures to ensure that these accounts are reviewed on an annual basis and externally reviewed once every 3 years.
So the money coming in when if a student's going to
Right.
play a sport, that's, I think, $175 per sport. And so the student activity fees all must go into one pot, and then it's supposed to be spent, they're supposed to spend for referees or for maintenance, the janitor, or, if it's a basketball game, the janitor, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so
Wanna
so
have
they're
better-
going to be addressing that. So, and it would be nice if they could get it done before, because last year the management letter was issued in February. So hopefully, like this we wouldn't see it this year. But one thing I would ask, Mr. Chairman, if we could have Scott at some point, whether it's go over last year's or in February or March sometime when it comes out, is to review the management letter to see what's out there. Because one of the big things out there is the OPEB trust. And that $80 million liability we have on the balance sheet, which I know is, all cities and towns are dealing with that, but it is a significant issue that,
And what is that? What does that stand for?
it's other post-employment benefits. It's for retirees. And it's an $80 million liability the town has on its books.
You have to have a certain amount, you're supposed to have a certain amount of money that you are paying into that.
And so we've paid in, it's about $274,000, I think it is. And it's sitting there in cash. And one of the things with the recommendations, the management letter, is that because we have this trust set up, but we haven't invested it. And that's one of the things that they say is invest you should put in some type of an investment. But Abington's no different than any other city or town. It's something that can struggle with, but it's a big number.
Yep.
So that wasn't, that item wasn't related to schools, but.
And I think we have a cutoff year by when we have to.
I don't know.
We can make millions off that.
Greg's always about making the million.
But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, on the school department.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul.
Paul.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Any other liaison reports? Correspondence, we went through what we have from town manager and the town finance director. I have not checked the mail, so we don't have our copy into the Beacon or anything of that sort yet. Meeting minute review, Deb is not here. We did have minutes go out, but don't have them here in front of us to go over and review. We will review those at our next meeting. Are there any other topics that anyone wants to bring up before we discuss date for our next meeting?
No.
All right, so next meeting, as we know, we're looking at a mid-December first draft. 4 weeks from now would be December 8th. December 15th would be the week after that. Does it make sense to meet on the 8th, or does it make sense to hold off until the 15th when we may or may not have a draft budget? Is there anything that
So we're
we,
expecting the free cash number within,
30 days?
completed within 30 days.
Completed within 30 days might not actually have the free
Right,
cash
not
number.
certified, but they might have a.
They'll
so
probably
that's-
have a pretty decent idea 30 days from now as to,
So that's a
what
month
that'll
out,
be.
that's a month out. And if the draft budget is a month out,
Seems like it would be the 15th.
15th seems to
yeah.
make sense. I know it's close to, we're getting close to the meeting at Greg's house. but-
Or the 25th, I mean, either one.
Is anyone
Yeah.
concerned
No,
with going all the way through to the 15th without meeting?
I
I
have
don't
a
think we
tiny
have
bit
a
of
lot.
concern, but just because I feel like
Because
we-
of the crunch of an April 4th.
Yeah.
But we do
But
have
we're
the-
not gonna I don't feel like we're going
Yeah.
to have much to go over.
No, I
Before
agree.
then.
I agree.
Could we do something where we schedule for the 8th, hold the 15th, and if there's nothing there, just push it to the 15th? Like 2 weeks before or something like that.
Yeah.
That might be a good idea,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
just to
So
have a.
tentatively the 8th, and I'll keep you all posted as we head up towards the 8th.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other motions?
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn?
A
Second.
motion from Drew and a second from Barbara. Is there any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.